I think there's something inherent in us and in childhood maybe where kids want to be curious, they want to be social, they want to be, solving problems and going on adventures. And just all of these playful aspects of childhood, I feel like are being kind of muted by putting them in front of a screen. So yes, we do need to set those guidelines and paint the big picture, especially for developing minds. But I also think we should put some trust in our children to explore their own curiosity.
Welcome to the Fresh Start Family Show. I'm your host, Wendy Snyder, powerful parenting educator and family life coach. And together we are going on a journey to help you expand your heart, learn new tools, and strengthen your family so you can build the family legacy of your dreams. I'm a mama too turned child and family advocate who went from being extremely stressed out back when my strong-willed little girl was a toddler to now thriving as a parent and having the honor to support thousands of families each year who choose to go from frazzled and impatient to peaceful and empowered. Each week, we will dive in with experts, thought leaders, authors, and advocates with insights to help you thrive in your parenting walk, as well as in your marriage and even in your career and faith walk too. Together, sometimes alone, sometimes with my better half and co-host Terry, we'll explore the triumphs and trials we all face as parents and share practical tools to fill our hearts, minds, and souls with inspiration. Take a deep breath and get ready to be poured into with some fresh start inspiration. Let's do this. Hello, families, and welcome back to a new episode. I'm so happy that you are here. Today on the show, we have Drew Vernon, who is the education director for Tonies, which is an audible play system for kids. And Drew came on the show to talk to us about how we can build up our child's ability to entertain themselves screen-free, which we all know is becoming more and more difficult as more and more toys and ways to do life become digital. And so I want you guys, as we head into this holiday season, to just feel empowered, like you are just reminded of why it's so important that you get your children as much screen-free time as possible in their day-to-day life. And I know with the holidays coming up and Black Friday deals that happen in late November, you are going to be tempted to just put more and more technology and screens into your child's life. And I just want to be someone who encourages you to remember that one of the biggest beauties of childhood is learning the ability to be bored and use your imagination and do things that don't involve having a screen in front of you. So I love Drew. He's been a friend of the Fresh Start Family Show for many, many years. He was actually on our podcast before episode 96, helping kids become problem solvers and critical thinkers through play and literature. And that was a really great episode. We'll put that in the show notes in case you want to check that out. But he spends his days at Tonies as the educational director, researching and sharing the developmental benefits of screen-free education and entertainment for children, especially with Tonies, which you'll hear more about in this episode. But he has done some really cool projects in the past. He's partnered with LeVar Burton to promote screen-free literacy. He's created Tony Palooza, which was a music festival featuring popular children's musician Laurie Berkner. And prior to Tony's, Drew actually had some really cool stuff he did in his career. One of them being that he managed the US preschool department for Lego. So how cool is that? I know so many of us have kids who love Legos, which is just the coolest screen-free entertainment for kids. So I know you're going to love this episode. Please make sure you're following. I'm at Fresh Start Wendy. Tony's is at tonies.us. If you're here in the US, they also have international accounts too. But we are doing a big contest this month where we're actually giving away 2 Tonies starter kits. They have been so generous to offer that to our community. And so when you come over to Instagram, just make sure you look for the post that says Tonies giveaway. It'll be very easy to find. I'll make sure that has big bold letters on it. We'll also make sure that we put the link in the show notes here, or if you're enjoying this episode over on YouTube, the link will be down below. But go enter that contest. All the directions will be there on how you enter. But how cool would that be if you were to win an Audible entertainment system for your child for Christmas or Hanukkah or the holidays or whatever, to get you through that Thanksgiving drive over the hills and through the woods to grandmother's house? These little Tony's educational and Audible systems are just the coolest, and I want you guys to go enter so you have a chance to win. That contest will go all the way through November till the day before Thanksgiving. So I believe that is, let's see, that should be Tuesday, or I guess it's Wednesday. This contest is going to go through Wednesday, November 27th. So you can enter all the way up until Wednesday, November 27th. We will close the contest at 11:59 p.m. Pacific for us to go and celebrate Thanksgiving with our families here in the US. But make sure you go enter. That'll give you guys a few weeks after this episode airs. But go check it out. Enter the contest and you can win one of these beautiful Tony starter kits too. But thank you for being here, you guys. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and thank you for caring about this topic of building how you can help your children really, entertain themselves without screens, because it is a skill set and a muscle that I believe children are losing. And it is actually like the stakes are really, really high for our kids if they're losing this muscle. And so you're going to hear us talk about that in this episode. So it is a very important conversation. Without further ado, help me welcome Drew to the show and enjoy this episode. Well, hello, listeners, and welcome back to a new episode of the Fresh Start Family Show. I'm thrilled to have Drew Vernon here from Tonies, who is going to be talking to us today about how we can build up our child's ability to entertain themselves screen-free. Welcome to the show, Drew.
Hi, Wendy. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you back. We adore what you guys are doing over at Tony's. We love Tony boxes. We recommend them to the students that we coach all over the world multiple times a week, it feels like, when we're counseling students on how to make bedtime easier or a nap time easier or free play time easier. So we just really love what you guys are doing over there at Tony's, and you guys have always been so supportive of our show, Drew. And so when we were chatting about connecting again and recording an episode, I wanted to record on this subject because I know that it is becoming more and more hard for parents to just resist the urge to hand their kids a screen. It is becoming more and more normalized. I actually was just at Disneyland with my almost 17-year-old. We snuck away and played hooky for the day from school and work last Wednesday. And I hadn't been, I guess it's been a year. It had been a year. I took them for their 16th birthday and their 13th birthday. As a family, we went to Disney, but just Stella and I went this year. And I swear I don't remember this last year, but this year, there were so many kids on screens, visual screens, in strollers and at lunch and dinner, or like eating their ice cream. And I was kind of like, wow, it felt like a big difference between this year and last year. And I've been doing this for quite some time, so I think I would have noticed this last year, but it just seems like it's increasingly becoming more and more common and more culturally the norm to just kind of let your kid be on a screen. And we all know what it's like to be a parent, right? Like sometimes you're just desperate and you need help. And also, I'm just so passionate about normalizing conversations that empower parents to choose an alternative route that, yes, sometimes makes you a little bit of a black sheep or a rainbow unicorn. And, you will be different, right? But the data that is coming out of, as Jonathan Haidt put in his new book, The Anxious Generation, it is just so clear that this is a really important topic. Like, this is a topic that could quite literally save our children's lives if we educate and empower ourselves as parents on how to teach our children this life skill of entertaining themselves screen free. So thank you for being here today with me as we just kind of chat and riff on this topic, Drew.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and it's something that I'm obviously very passionate and enthusiastic about. That's crazy about the Disneyland story.
Yeah,
The happiest place on earth, and we're
right,
spending how much money and just to put our kids in front of screens. I had a similar experience not too long ago, taking my kid to soccer practice, and some of the younger kids, the siblings of the kids playing soccer, were sitting there at the park on a sunny day, just
right.
watching stuff on a tablet, and it blew my mind. So I agree with you. I think this is becoming a national conversation, and I think I'm trying to be part of the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more it's normalized, and again, this you and I speaking about like, wow, what we're witnessing is not from a place of judgment, because it's like we know, right? I mean, we know what it's like to just want to have some more peace. But it is from a place of advocacy. I mean, we've got to do something different and help parents choose a different path. Yeah, when we were at Disney, I couldn't believe it. At dinner, Stella and I, we got into this restaurant that we were so shocked that we got into, because normally, I mean, it was so crowded on a Wednesday. We were like, it's mid-September, like what the heck? And there was the Incredicoaster going right next to this restaurant. So we're on this lake. The Incredicoaster is going right there. There's the Disney Ferris wheel, which is beautiful. It's sunset, which is like majestic.
Mhm.
And there's like swings going, there's like music. There's like over in this one area, there was like a little quartet playing music. And all of that wasn't enough
Mhm.
to like have the children just be able to eat their macaroni and cheese without the screen, right? So again, it's pretty wild what's happening in our culture, and let's just talk about how we can do it differently. So, we're going to cover today 5 ways that we can build up our child's ability to entertain themselves screen-free. And like we do here at Fresh Start Family, we cannot start by focusing on the kids. We got to start by looking at ourselves. So, I know you have, I think your kids are like 8, are they 8, 12, and 15 now? Because it's been a few
Yeah,
years.
that's right. Yeah, good memory.
Okay. And mine are 13, 16. And so this first concept is we have to look at our own behavior around the interactive screens and really ask ourselves, are we modeling to our kids enough of kind of the alternative behavior, so to speak? So whether it's reading, knitting, painting, journaling, playing guitar, drums, or audible entertainment, which so many of us love our podcast. We love music, of course, but some stuff that doesn't involve the visual screens. That first question of like, how are we doing with that? And are we modeling it? And I know I still have a ton of work to do. I actually just had an incredibly inspirational interview before you that inspired me like, okay, I got to get back on track a little bit with what I'm modeling. Because for me, it is tough to disconnect as an entrepreneur, especially since my office is in my house. I hate that we have these devices that's like, well, your whole business is just in your pocket. And at any time you can just access anything to just get one more email sent, or
Mhm.
everything's online, right? It's like I could just place groceries, or if I need to get back to grandma, it's via a text. And so I was reminded that I really want to change that behavior, and I want to build in more activities after the 5 p.m. hour, especially that does not involve looking at a screen. How are you doing with that? What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you constantly kind of have to remind yourself on that, or are you pretty good with boundaries around that?
I would say I'm getting better. I'm not perfect
Mm,
at it, but I am mindful of it, and I think that's the first step is just to be mindful. I really think of it in a couple of different ways. Number one is just to set boundaries with yourself to say, I do my best not to look at a screen before 8 a.m. You know, I usually wake up somewhere
Mm,
between 6 and 6:30, and I at least have an hour and a half where I don't check a screen because the last thing I need, you know, I try to meditate and things. The last thing I need is something else coming into my mind. And that's the first thing. If you go
yeah.
to it, it's that email. It's you got to do this today. And similarly, you know, my personal limit is after 9 p.m. After 9 p.m., you know, the phone goes off and I don't touch it again until 8 a.m. So just setting some boundaries, I think, is good. And the other thing that I try to do is I try to be intentional with the use of my phone. Am I using it as a tool? Do I need to text somebody to take care of an issue? That's great. Am I using it as an entertainment device or as a boredom killer? That's where you start to get, I think, in dangerous territory because if you're just on it because you're bored or because you don't have anything else to do or you're doom scrolling, I think that's where you get into the more problematic and addictive behaviors. So I try to use it as a tool, not to say that it can't be an entertainment device, but if it's intentionally entertaining, if you're going with a specific, you know, mission to watch this video or listen to that song, that's great. But if you're doing it just to kill time or out of mindlessness, that's where I think it's a little problematic. And to your initial point, it does go back to the modeling and your kids seeing what you're doing. If you're on your screens, when your kids are around, they're going to note that and they're going to adopt similar behaviors.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's wild how every year that goes by, it's becoming more and like less and less likely when you walk into a home that you would see like the bookshelf of books or like the knitting, the box of like knitting needles. Like, I don't know. I feel like we're just becoming more and more accustomed to just having the free time be on devices versus actually doing some of those other things. So in your home, like, do you guys have it? Do you have music? Do you like we have Taryn used to play electric guitar. He actually has stopped, but Stella still is a drummer. I actually have a double drum kit behind me, which drives me nuts because she's supposed to be teaching kids lessons, and it just hasn't happened because she's so busy. But half of our garage is two double drum sets, and that does give her an option to do something else in the home. And we have a ping pong table that we use. But like in your home, what are some things that are fun that you guys are modeling and doing that are outside of screen entertainment? Besides Tony's, of course, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, sure. You know, we do a lot of games together. You know, we'll play
Mm.
board games, card games. We've got a ping pong table. We started gardening this year, so just getting out
Oh,
and you know,
nice.
I had to pull weeds every day as a kid. I don't make my kids pull weeds every day, but spending outside time outside. And then, you know, I am an amateur potter, so I've got a pottery studio in my garage, and my youngest 8-year-old is just like begging and begging for pottery lessons. So we started doing that together. And it, you know, it all requires a little bit of planning and, you know, getting, you know, active and engaged. And, you know, we have screen time too. We try to balance that as well. So I don't mean to paint
Yeah.
this perfect picture of a perfect
Yeah.
household. It's not that, but we do
Yeah.
try and we try to keep things in balance.
My gosh, that reminds me, I have wanted a pottery wheel for years. And you actually have one.
Yeah, I've got a pottery wheel. I've got a self-contained sink, so I can, you know, wash up. I also have a kiln, so I can actually fire in my garage as well.
Wow. All right. You've inspired me, Drew. You've inspired me. All right. Our point number two, if we want to build up our children's ability to entertain themselves screen free, is we have this idea of build in empowerment through self managed toys, resources, and activities that your child can be fully in charge of. And obviously Tony's does a great job of this because they're so unbreakable, and kids can just push them forward back when it comes to stories or music, whatever they're listening to. But this idea of empowerment is so important if we want our kids to actually get excited about entertaining themselves screen free, is to really put them in charge of things, right? Like things that they don't necessarily need our help with, even if it's like painting, where they for sure know how to create an area with like a big splash mat where they can make a mess and know how to do it, right? So safe places to be messy, things that they can fully manage on their own, confidence in areas like if we can help them ahead of time, I think with baby proofing areas so they can really freely know that they can just do what they need to do and they're not going to break something. Any thoughts on that as far as like building in empowerment through self-managed toys or activities? Like, do you see a lift with your kids when they're in charge and you don't have to micromanage their time, which we know comes so much with screen time, right? Like, you have to micromanage how many minutes do they get on the iPad or the TV. This is kind of the opposite of that, of letting them be fully in charge of their own activities.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think that a lot of this comes down to setting a boundary and having guidelines, but giving autonomy and freedom within those guidelines within that boundary. So when you're able to
Yeah.
give a child a closed system, in this case, like a Tony box, they're not going to be connecting to the internet. They're not going to be, making,
Yeah.
purchases or having, things spy on them. It's a self-contained system and they can play any type of story or content within that and operating the device as you mentioned, and they have kind of full freedom within that environment because we do want to keep our kids safe. We do want to make sure that it's not going to be damaging or get out of control. I like what you said about the kid proofing spaces, even if they are going to get like a little bit messy, like it's all kind of contained within a system. And so I'm a big proponent of teaching that because really it's a maturity issue where as they grow and progress, they're going to be getting additional responsibilities and privileges within that system.
Parents, have you grabbed my free resource called Setting Strong Limits Cheat Sheet, where I will teach you the exact 4 steps I teach inside our signature Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint program, but just kind of the bird's eye view, so to speak, so you can peek into this process and learn more about why it works so well to influence kids, especially strong-willed ones. This free Setting Limits Cheat Sheet comes with a beautiful printable you can hang on your fridge or keep inside your car to help you get through all the drama and highs and lows that come with normal parenthood. And you can get a copy by either shooting me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Fresh Start Wendy with the word limits, or you can head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/limits now. And if it's easier and you're watching this on YouTube, you can click below in the pinned comment or via the show description to get easy access to this free resource. Enjoy! Yeah, I love that. And I do love how Tony's seems to be unbreakable. I've been playing around with aromatherapy a ton with our students lately, and we have like a kids kit that sometimes if I'm on an airplane or somewhere, I was just teaching a class in person and I let the little boy play with. I guess he was like 15, 16 months maybe. And I handed his mom the kids kit and he was unscrewing these oils and they're glass, but they're very thick. And I was like, don't worry, he can't break it. And she kind of looked at me like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, he can totally be in charge. He's not going to break them. Even if he puts them in his mouth, it's safe. It's okay. And he ended up playing with those little aromatherapy oils for quite some time while I taught a class and she was able to engage. So that was cool. But when I think about Tony's, it just feels like they're unbreakable. So my question is, has there ever been a Tony box that you heard that got broken? Because in the ones I've seen and the ones we had for a while, it feels like they're so durable. Like a kid, can you break a Tony box? I guess
Uh,
if you put it in a bathtub.
Uh, well, yeah, I would not recommend the bathtub because of the charging station. It's not waterproof.
Yes.
I have seen the ears. So these are the volume ears,
Oh,
volume up, volume down. It actually was from a dog. It was not a kid, but a dog
oh, there we go.
had bitten off the ears. But even that, is easily replaced. You can find kind of the replacements, but I have seen the ears get chewed off. But the box itself is pretty near indestructible.
Yeah. Oh, I love that about Tony's. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on to our next point, which is if we want to help our children build the ability to entertain themselves screen free, we've got to make agreements ahead of time. And so here at Fresh Start Family, we love to teach our parents a four-step process. We teach it in our Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint. And that's to setting strong limits and sticking to them consistently, which we know when it comes to technology, we've got to learn and be able to do this as parents. Like our children's mental health depends on it. But one of the biggest parts of that is the making agreements part, which is very different than compliance statements, right? Compliance statements is just do it because I said so, right? Like no iPads, no whatever because I said so. Whereas agreements is more, let's talk about this as a team and let's truly make this something where you understand why we have such a firm boundary and how this boundary respects you in addition to respecting us. And I think the earlier we can educate our kids on the difference of how their nervous system gets hit or their body feels when they're interacting with a screen versus interacting with a non-screen entertainment, right? So in the case of Tony's, it's an audible.
Mhm.
It's just so different how it hits their system, right? So this idea of making agreements ahead of time, right? Like, do you advocate for I think you're similar to us, right? Like no screens in the bedroom, but Tony's are
Mhm.
totally cool, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think having the guidelines and setting the expectations is a good start. Obviously, the boundaries with where the screen can be used, and I find the best success as a dad when, we try to like talk through the day or talk through the next few hours. Okay,
Yeah.
you can go watch your show. How long is the show? It's 25 minutes, it's 45 minutes, whatever. At the end of that, you're going to turn that off and we're going to go to another activity. So it's helping map out their day and their expectations because, these services, Netflix and all these others, they go right on to the next episode. They want to keep you hooked. Like that's their business model is to keep you
Yeah.
glued to the screen. So I think you need to anticipate that and kind of walk that through with your child to make sure that they know what to expect after the show is over.
Yeah, and so many kids, they do just want to know what to expect, where the fence is. And then we come in here at Fresh Start Family and we teach parents, okay, when it is time to turn it off, like how do you, when they are like, no, and they're like pushing go on the next episode, how do you actually come in with the rest of that process where you're going to follow through? The TV is going to get turned off, but it's not going to end in like threats or this disconnecting moment of chaos between you and your child. And so that's so important. But so many kids, just their soul will settle if you just let them know in advance,
Mhm.
here's what's going to go down. And then to always, like Tony's is just such a nice option because they always have that as an available entertainment form. But the screen, right, the iPad, the TV, all that kind of stuff comes to an end. But I do think that if we can educate our kids as early as possible on the effects on the body, and I know it's easier said than done with a 3, 4, 5 year old, but I mean, when it came to keeping Stella off an iPhone till high school, we were definitely rainbow unicorns in our town in Southern California. But we just had so many conversations between, I'd say, sixth and eighth grade is really when it flared up of why we have this strong boundary, which really brings us to our next point of setting firm limits and knowing what your yes behind your no is. But really, there was just so much education work that came in there to help her understand how the interactive screens, especially the social, the constant being on, the dopamine hits that are coming from those interactive screens, the science, the research behind that, how that was actually leading to suffering for children,
Mhm.
and to be able to put the data in front of her was really important consistently. And by the time she did get that device in her hand once she was later in high school, I think she really did understand it, but it was such a stark difference to most of the kids being given the devices, interactive devices, very young, and not having explained to them this is how it's going to hit your body, and I just don't think they understand, right? When you're a young kid, you're just going to need someone to explain that to you multiple times because it doesn't make sense. Like, what's the big deal, right? This is just interactive games. It's not a big deal. We're playing like, there's little monsters, mom. What's the big deal? But to have a parent stay patient and say, no, Like you can play with this, and that. Here's your options. We'll make agreements. We'll give you tons of different things that you can do. And here's the reason why behind our no. Here's the yes. It's your mental health. It's healthy friendships. It's good sleep. It's confidence versus shame about an addiction. Would you agree that just teaching that to kids as early as possible is important?
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned Dr. Haidt in his work, and I've been actually learning a lot from his work and learning a lot about Gen Z. And it seems like they have the upcoming generation kind of has a strong sense of this, and sometimes even more so than their parents. They're seeing the effects. They
Yeah.
don't want, to be on social media at the older ages. I don't know if the younger kids are feeling this way about the excessive screen time, but I think there's something inherent in us and in childhood maybe where kids want to be curious, they want to be social, they want to be, solving problems and going on adventures. And just all of these playful aspects of childhood, I feel like are being kind of muted by putting them in front of a screen. So yes, we do need to set those guidelines and paint the big picture, especially for developing minds. But I also think we should put some trust in our children to explore their own curiosity and to, we have to give them, opportunities and activities and make it easy for them. But I think that it's definitely something that they have a sense of.
Yeah, it's true. And speaking of Jonathan Haidt's work, I actually had got to interview the co-founder of an organization. So he co-founded an organization called Let Grow with a woman named Lenore Skenazy, I want to say her name is. She was such a cool interview a few weeks ago. But their whole organization is about basically helping parents understand how a lot of the data that's coming in around the increased anxiety and depression and even suicide that's happening in our youth in the second decade of life in the last 10, 15 years, they've created so much data to bring it back to not just the screens, but they actually refer to themselves as like agnostic on screens, which is really interesting. But they have the data, and the thought pattern is it's actually from the constraint of the parent. So as the information spreads, right? And we find out more, and there's more information about danger in the world. We've actually like tightened the grip on children, and there's less free range happening in the world, right? Like you're not just allowed to go out on Saturday and ride your bike and disappear until dark anymore, right? And it just makes me think of this conversation because a lot of times with the interactive screens, whereas Tony's is much different, none of this is happening with Tony's, but because it's not a problem. But with the interactive screens, there's so much control being put on it of like, I have to control it. So I've got to check you.
Mhm.
And we teach a much different way here. But most parents are operating from the place of we're watching you.
Mhm.
We've got apps on your phone. We're going to monitor your texting, which is great to some extent. Sometimes not, but like we're controlling it. We have the ability to flip the switch. Like we're gonna try to protect any mistakes. Like there, you can feel that there's a control element that is a bit of an interesting situation we've got going on. And you can see how with like a Tony's box, there's no addiction being formed. It's just entertainment. It's ending boredom. It's helping them with boredom. It's helping them have creative imagination and all the things, but it doesn't come along with those things of like, my parent is controlling this and I'm not fully in charge of it. Does that make sense? Like it just made me think
Yeah,
of
it
that.
does. And I think maybe what it stems from is that like the stakes are so high
Yeah.
because when you have a device in your pocket, you literally have the world at your fingertips for good or for ill. And so I think a lot of
Yeah.
parents want to control that because not because they don't trust the child, but because any number of things could happen from the outside coming in. And I think that's probably a
Yeah.
healthy caution or guard, but to put to to give the child a device or to put them in an environment where that's not required because you don't have the concerns of the entire world, I think is kind of freeing as a parent, and it leaves the
Yeah.
child in a scenario where it can just be about childhood and imagination, like you said. And so I think that's a really interesting kind of dynamic between the two.
Yeah. And it is. It's like once you introduce it and it's an option, like, I mean, once you start to introduce that screens at dinner when you go out to a restaurant is the option, it
Mm.
is now the way. That's what I've noticed with families. And again, I'm just like, wow, every time we go out to dinner now, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of just scanning, not in judgment, more in observation, and just again, from an advocacy's perspective, I can feel the little like inner uh-oh going off because it feels like if there's 100% of kids in restaurants, it feels like at least 20 to 30%, maybe probably even more, 30 to 40% are watching a screen during their meal as the parent is trying to just enjoy a meal, right? Like have a conversation, which I get, but it's a slippery slope. And as soon as you bring it in, then the child is not going to be able, like, they're going to expect that every single time, right? So just, again, like the longer we can prolong that being our norm, and if you just have entertainment for airplanes, restaurants, even Disneyland when they're starting to get tired in their stroller and they might be winding down for a nap, but just imagine just having earphones and a Tony box, which is just an audible play device or audible story and music box versus an interactive device. Like it's not too much of a switch. It's just enough though that it makes a difference and it doesn't have that addictive quality that fully brings the human out of their surroundings. Like they're still able to see people around them. They're still there, not like a little zombie, right? Like that happens when we just let the child go into the screen.
Yeah, I can echo all of that. I think, the screen kind of shows them exactly what the stimulus is. It puts them in the zone. And, by removing the screen, it leaves it up to interpretation and to creative imagination,
Yeah.
and a little bit less stimulation.
Yeah. And so that's our last point. And we've kind of already talked to this point a little bit about just about teaching our kids young about the brain and how our bodies, hearts, and minds thrive when given white space, nature, and opportunities to use our imagination. And so I do love how you can take these story boxes that you guys have and bring them into the backyard. As we've talked about, they're super durable. And then they still are giving the child an opportunity to use their imagination because a screen is going to provide it all, right? Like it gives you what does the character look like, what is exactly happening. So you're getting the audible, you're getting the vision. But with a story box, a child still has to use their imagination to what does this character look like? Even though the Tony sits on top and it shows you the little character, but there's other characters and stories or music, and so there is that imagination element there that is so important for our children that I think so many of them are missing out on when we have less and less of that in their day. Would you agree?
I would say that imagination and creativity are muscles that need to be developed, and you need repetition, listening to stories, listening to descriptions, learning new words, formulating how things, different ideas come together in your mind. That's all better done when you have the freedom to do that in your own brain rather than having that be given to you. So I think it's critical for kids to get the practice of doing that. And that's why I think, listening to stories, listening to someone read to you is the first step to literacy. And you take that and you build on it and you get a lot of stories from a lot of different sources, and you begin to learn what the creative process is like so you can learn how to imagine and create your own stories.
Fall and wintertime is officially here in the US, so it's that time of year where the leaves start to turn, the days get shorter, and we draw closer to the fire and our families to prepare our hearts to celebrate the holiday season together. Every single one of us, I know, wants the holiday season to be filled with joy and ease, and in order to make that happen, parents, we really need to know how to handle conflicts and challenges with connection and firm kindness. If you are sick of threatening, bribing, or yelling just to get your kids to sit still at the dinner table or keep their hands to themselves, our Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint will teach you a step-by-step recipe for success. So you can set strong limits and then follow through with consistency without the drama and dysregulated nervous system. Give yourself and your spouse the gift of this mini course that's just $27, but packed with value and easy to finish in just 1 hour. Head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/firm and kind to learn more and get started today.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's like I was watching a show on Sunday morning, and I recently, and I noticed how so much of our learning nowadays, at least in the US and the educational system, is done on the interactive screens. And I kind of thought, because I knew we had our interview coming up, I was like, gosh, I wish that we could create more just audible learning, but like everything, it seems to be more and more screen based, and it just feels like we're missing out that we could possibly accomplish the same thing if we had more audible stuff going on, so a kid can look out the window at the tree that's changing color in the fall while they're listening to something, but the teacher doesn't have to. I don't know, just an idea. Educational world. I had looked up some research, and some different studies I had found. One of them says research shows that children who actively use their imagination through imaginative play experience significant benefits in their cognitive, social, and emotional development, leading to overall thriving as they grow up. This includes improved creativity, problem-solving skills, communication abilities, emotional regulation, and a strong sense of self, all stemming from the ability to explore different scenarios and perspectives in their minds. Another research that I'd found as I was preparing for this interview was just about nature. We know that the more our kids are on the interactive screens, the less, like many kids are starting to experience nature deficits, because like the more we bring in the interactive screens, the less they're in nature. But researchers found that engaging in nature can improve kids' working memory and attention. A study even found that children who grew up in greener spaces had increased volume in the areas of the brain that deal with memory and attentiveness. So just important data that we can point to just know that it's really important that we get this stuff into our kids' hands. Okay, Drew. So we've talked about all of these incredible ways that we can build up our children's ability to entertain themselves screen-free. And now I just want to talk a little bit about why Tonies does such a great job of this. Again, we've been advocating and using Tonies here at Fresh Start Family for years now, but will you talk to us just a little bit about the educational benefits of Tonies, and really using them for home-based learning? We have a lot of homeschool families in our community, and we just have a lot of families who love to have their kids in constant learning. Like many of our students just cherish being lifelong learners. And so what are the educational benefits of Tonies?
Yeah, where to begin? I mean, I guess begin with the Tony box. So, this is the speaker that works with the figures. Figures are called Tonys, and it starts with kind of the play pattern. So this isn't just an audio device, but this is a multi-sensorial tool. So kids, at very young ages can grab the figure, they can put it on the box. It's magnetic, so it'll stay on the box. They can manage the volume control and the chapter selection. So we talked a lot about that sense of autonomy. That's kind of the first stage, and everything else, once you have the playback system down, which takes about 10 seconds, then it's all about the content. So the content can start as young as infancy. This can be a white noise machine. You buy this for a brand new baby,
Yes, that's
put it on the
right.
shelf. For the first year, it's just white noise and lullabies and nature sounds. And then it actually can grow with the child, because then you get into your songs and your shapes and your colors and your farm animals and your princesses, if you're into that, or superheroes. And you start to progress with the content as you get older. And then as you get through those years, it can become, an educational device as well. So uh, we're we're coming out with an increasing number of educational titles. We're in partnership with National Geographic, and we're doing our own series on, I've got bugs right here. This teaches kids all about bugs. We've got other ones that are teaching them, Egyptian myths or Greek myths or West African tales. We actually
Nice.
just launched this week. We launched our audiobooks for older kids. So, kids even as old as ages, 6 to 10 can now listen to chapter books on the Tony box. So it really is a versatile device for a child. Again, from infancy, age 0 to 10. And then you get into the creatives, which are the blank ones where you can record your own audio content that promotes creativity. That can get you into, the early teens. And so it really is a device that can be used throughout childhood for a multitude of purposes.
I love it. And I will say that Taryn used his for white noise to go to sleep, what, like all the way up until he was like 12. So maybe like 11 and a half. But he used his even after he stopped listening to the stories. Because for a while, I remember there was like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and there was, what else was it? There was like one more something that was like for the older kids. So I'm glad that you guys have expanded that. And then what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, one more thing too of just the benefits that I know I've heard from my students over the years is military families have and grandparents have used those blank Tonies to record and then like record a story and then to be able to have that child listen to it while the parent is deployed or the grandparent is far away. And so that's been a really cool way to have this little toy serve and connect families. So I've heard a lot of those stories over the past. Okay, and then also how do we get Tonys? So obviously we can buy Tonys, but you had mentioned that nowadays you can request them from your library and there's some state voucher scholarship money possibly happening. So tell us about that, Drew.
Yeah, so all the traditional ways are still there. We're expanding in Target, Walmart, Amazon, Tonys.com. So that's kind of all the retail locations. But I lead the education program now. So part of my goal is to make Tonys available to as many kids as possible, and by putting them in educational settings. So we've started creating kind of educational accounts for libraries. We've got over 500 libraries carrying Tonys now. So check your local library. If they don't have it, then you can ask your librarian to reach out to us to carry Tonys. So a lot of them are circulating them, making them available to their patrons. Same goes for, your local school. We have an ambassador program where parents are actually donating Tony boxes to their kids' local classroom. Or if you're doing home-based learning, as you mentioned, we are working with an increasing number of states on scholarship programs where if you have received a voucher or a scholarship, uh, typically you can spend it on different curricula or vendors that have been approved as educational. And so we are increasingly becoming an approved educational vendor so that homeschooling families can purchase Tonys using these vouchers.
Oh, that's so cool. I need to look into that for Fresh Start Family. I feel like because we have a big kids program for social emotional learning, I'm like, I feel like I need to be an approved vendor for, so I got to get that information from you. And then you also had mentioned something about you could write a grant. What is that all about?
Yeah,
Like, is
we've
that,
had some teachers, I'm learning a lot about early education and teachers and how scrappy and resourceful they are. But there's
yeah.
a variety of state and federal programs that teachers can submit for, and they can request funds to purchase Tonys for their classroom. So anybody who's interested in that, learning more, can reach out to me, and I can give some tips on how to write a successful grant for Tonys. But it really comes down to just illustrating the fact that they do promote literacy, that they do promote creativity and imagination. And we've started doing some studies that help prove that, which are helpful to put in the grants. But again, it's really encouraging to see teachers getting government grants to purchase Tonys for their classes.
That is so exciting. Okay, so we can put your email maybe in the show notes and people can
Yeah,
reach out.
education.us at tonys.com. We can put that in the show notes. That's the best way to reach out to
Great.
the education program.
I love it. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, what a great conversation today. I hope listeners and viewers that this has really inspired you and helped you feel motivated to bring in more ways to help your child build out their ability to entertain themselves screen free. And as Drew said, go see if you can get some Tony boxes at your library and into your school system. That would be incredible. So, Drew, finish us off with where can everyone come find you and the work that you're doing over at Tony's? How can we talked about a few ways, but just leave us off with where they can come find you.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't mention is our community groups. So if you go
Oh,
to Facebook, if you're a teacher, look up Tony's for Teachers. If you're a librarian, Tony's for Libraries. We've got Tony's on Foot is our ambassador program. A lot of our homeschooling families are also in Tony's for Teachers. So I would recommend coming there because we have a growing network of families that care about reducing screen time. They care about promoting early literacy, and they're all sharing with each other different ideas, tips, and tricks. And how do you record onto a Creative Tony? How do you store your Tonys? How do you do this? How do you do that? So it's just a wonderful community resource to jump into one or more of these groups. But other than that, you can reach me at education.us@tonys.com, and that's the best way to get started.
I love it. Tony's on Foot Ambassador Program. I can't believe I'm not a part of this yet. I gotta jump in and be a part of that. That sounds great. And yeah, that community piece, because it does take a village. And every single one of us who has the courage to press into advocacy in this area and really be someone who's willing to be different in our communities and our school systems and our faith communities, all the things, it matters. It matters. So all right. Well, Drew, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you and all the work that you're doing over at Tony's. It's been great to chat today.
Thank you, Wendy. It's always my pleasure, and it's always great to see you. And thanks for having me back.
Yep. We'll see you next time, listeners.
Hooray! You made it to the end of a Fresh Start Family Show episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a quick second, make sure you hit subscribe to our show so you can be updated when our new episodes drop. I will see you back soon for the next episode.
All right, that's a wrap. You made it to the end of a value-packed Fresh Start Family Show episode. I hope you are feeling empowered and motivated and inspired. Now is a great time to head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/firm and kind to grab the Firm and Kind Parenting Blueprint, our $27 mini course that will teach you our easy to implement yet magical in terms of results 4-step process to setting strong limits and sticking to them with consistency. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next episode.